My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 28. And if you'd asked me a year ago what kept me up at night, I'd have said overdue bills and a failing transmission. Not the idea that a house could decide it didn't want you living in it anymore. But that was before I bought the place with the basement door that started bleeding at 3 a.m. I wasn't supposed to get this house. That's the first thing you need to understand. Guys like me don't end up with detached two-story homes on the edge of a quiet town with actual trees in the yard and a cracked concrete driveway. It was a foreclosure, priced stupidly low, as is plastered all over the listing. The bank didn't want to talk about why it sat empty for 3 years. The realtor changed the subject every time I asked. "Old guy died," he said once, too fast. "Natural causes, paperwork's in order." He never met my eyes. I work remote night shift now. Systems monitoring and security diagnostics. Black hoodie with some faded startup logo, dark jeans, steel-toe work boots I don't really need anymore but still wear out of habit because once you've spent years as a maintenance tech in industrial plants, you feel naked without them. The night work made the house feel even cheaper. I could sleep during the day, work in the little office upstairs at night, drink bad coffee in a place that was technically mine. No roommates, no landlord, no shared walls. Just me and creaking wood and a basement door that didn't want to stay quiet. The first week was normal enough, strange noises, settling boards, the usual old house orchestra. The basement door at the rear of the kitchen was ugly but boring. Thick, scarred wood, old brass knob, 4 heavy hinges bolted into the frame. It stayed shut. I kept it that way because the previous owner had left a handwritten note taped to the fridge in shaky block letters. "Do not go into basement after midnight. Keep door locked. No matter what you hear." I laughed when I read it, assumed some dementia or paranoia, crumpled it and tossed it, but I still found myself checking the lock every night before I logged into the monitoring system for my shift. Maybe it was the note. Maybe it was the way the door felt heavier than it should when I tried it, like something leaned on the other side pushing back. My job put me in front of 3 monitors, live feeds and logs pouring in from various state facilities, prisons, water treatment plants, a couple of small government labs tucked into mountain towns I'd never heard of. One of those was labeled only, Project Rubicon Secure. I didn't have full access, just perimeter diagnostics and alarm flags. If something tripped an alert near one of their sites, my system lit up red, and I sent a canned escalation to a contact labeled AEG-DHS. Most nights were quiet. I'd run checks, watch graphs crawl, listen to the house breathe around me. That first strange night started like any other. Rain ticking against the kitchen window, coffee cooling at my elbow, blue light from the screens turning my skin corpse pale. I remember glancing at the cheap digital clock on my desk, 2:57 a.m., and thinking I could probably get away with a 5-minute break if the log stayed green. That's when I heard the first thump from downstairs. It wasn't the casual little creak of old joists or pipes expanding. It was a solid, dull impact like someone had thrown their weight against a wall. The sound traveled up through the floor into my boots, a vibration more than noise. I froze, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Another thump, closer to the kitchen this time. The house settled into listening silence and I realized I was holding my breath, straining to hear anything else. A third sound came, not a thump this time, but a slow scraping like something heavy being dragged across concrete. It came from directly under my chair. The basement. My first thought was rational, animal, raccoon maybe, or something bigger that had gotten in through a broken vent. My second thought was, it was the memory of that note in shaky block letters, and the weight of the basement door when I'd tried it that afternoon, how it had resisted me for a second like a sleeping thing. I told myself I was an idiot, muted my headset and got up. The hallway light seemed too dim as I walked barefoot through the house, boot soles whispering on old wood. The closer I got to the kitchen, the more wrong the air felt, damp, heavy, like the pressure dropped before a thunderstorm. I rounded the corner and stopped. The basement door was still shut. The deadbolt I'd slid across at midnight was still horizontal, but the bottom edge of the door frame, where the old paint met scuffed linoleum, glistened. At first I thought it was water. The storm had been building all night. Maybe something was leaking. But the smell hit me a second later, iron and salt and something like copper pennies held too long in your fist. The liquid seeping from under the basement door was dark and thick, almost black in the low light, and it crawled rather than flowed, beads of it forming and rolling forward in slow, deliberate arcs. My stomach rolled. I stepped closer without meaning to, drawn like a moth to a live wire. It couldn't be blood. There was no way. There was no living thing down there big enough to leak this much. I stood there in my black hoodie and boots and watched the line of dark wetness creep an inch farther across the floor, forming tiny branching veins. The house seemed to be holding its breath with me. Behind me in the office, one of my monitors chimed. Emergency alert flashed red across the center screen, reflected faintly in the microwave door as I turned my head. I ran back, eyes catching on the tracking panel just long enough to see the origin tag that made every hair on my arm stand up. Origin, DHS-AEG, Project Rubicon. Destination, All-Night Operators, Region 4. The alert text populated line by line. Unexplained structural anomalies reported in residential properties NEAR secure sites. If you encounter fluid seepage from walls, FLOORS, or closed doors between 02:55 and 03:05, do not open the source. Do not make physical contact. Do not descend below ground level. My gaze slid back toward the kitchen. I stared at the alert blinking red across my monitors, the words burning into my brain as if they'd been carved there. Do not descend below ground level. Do not open the source. It felt like the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees instantly, like the house itself had exhaled a long, cold breath across the back of my neck, and I knew before I even turned around that the bleeding at the basement door had gotten worse. Not dripping, not seeping, but spreading, as if whatever was behind the wood had realized it had my attention and wanted more of it. My boots thudded heavily as I walked back toward the kitchen, as though gravity had doubled and the air had thickened into something syrupy and wet. The smell hit me first, copper and rot, the stink of something that had been alive once but had spoiled in the dark. When I rounded the corner, my lungs froze. The blood, or whatever passed for blood, was no longer just a thin line creeping beneath the door. Now it had pooled outward in a wide, branching stain, fingers of red-black fluid crawling across the linoleum in slow, pulsing tendrils like roots searching blindly for purchase. And the door was trembling. Not violently, not like something was slamming against it, but with a subtle, rhythmic vibration, thrum, 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 as if something large and breathing was leaning its full weight against the other side. I backed up until my shoulders hit the wall. My breath felt loud in my own ears, and the silence pressing against the house felt hungry. The deadbolt rattled once, just once, like something had curled a finger, if it had fingers, around the knob and tested it. I don't know how long I stood there, spine pressed against plaster, staring at a door that had begun to bleed like a slaughtered animal. But eventually my monitor chimed again, sharp enough to snap me out of the frozen terror curling up my spine. I stumbled back into my office and saw a new line of text appear beneath the emergency alert. If blood loss from source exceeds 0.5 liters, evacuate premises immediately. Leave DOORS unlocked. Do not attempt to seal entry points. Do not attempt to interfere with breach. I reread the last instruction because it made no sense. Leave the doors unlocked. Every primal instinct screamed the opposite. But whoever wrote this alert knew something I didn't, something that made my basement leak blood and my house tremble. Another window popped up. Incoming transmission, secure channel. The sender ID made my stomach knot, Rubicon field contact, active site. The message was only 4 words, it's choosing the exit. A heartbeat later, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then the entire house hummed with a low-frequency vibration that I felt deep in my teeth, the kind of resonance that makes your bones feel hollow and your vision go tight around the edges. I grabbed my jacket, my keys, my phone, everything I could without wasting precious seconds, and sprinted toward the front door. Halfway across the living room, the house went entirely silent. Not quiet, silent. No hum from the fridge, no ticking from the cheap wall clock, no groan of the wind. The world cut sound like a severed artery, and then the basement door opened. Not all the way, not with a slam, just a slow, soft creak, the kind of careful, deliberate movement that made every hair rise along my arms. The metallic tang of blood thickened in the air instantly. Something wet hit the floor with a soft slap. Then another. Drip, drip, drip. I didn't turn around. You have to understand, I couldn't. It felt like the air behind me had weight, like a pressure pushing gently against my spine, urging me to stand still. Keep listening, keep waiting. A sound slid across the kitchen tiles. Not footsteps, not claws, something dragging, something that didn't care that it left streaks behind as it moved. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket, nearly making me scream. I fumbled it out and saw one message: no sender, do not look at it. Do not address it. Do not acknowledge it. Exit quietly. Do not run. Running was all I wanted to do. But instinct, in some twisted primal way, told me the message wasn't a suggestion. Whatever had come out of the basement didn't respond to speed. It responded to attention, to recognition, to being noticed. So I walked, slowly, one foot in front of the other, forcing myself not to flinch as the dragging sound behind me grew louder, wetter, closer. Something exhaled behind me, a strained, bubbling rasp like lungs half filled with liquid. The front door was only 10 steps away. 9, 8. The floorboards beneath me vibrated faintly, as though the house itself was shivering with me. 7, 6. The creature, or whatever shape it wore, stopped moving, not far behind me, close enough that I felt warmth at the back of my calves. Warmth, and the faint stickiness of breath that didn't belong to anything living. 5, 4. A drop of something thick and hot landed on the back of my left boot. The smell hit instantly, iron and decay and something sulfuric. Whatever was behind me was bleeding or sweating or leaking, and it was tall. So tall that whatever dripped from it fell from above my knees. 3, 2, I reached the doorknob. My hands shook violently, but I didn't drop the keys, didn't turn around, didn't breathe. I twisted the lock and felt it click. 1. I pulled the door open and stepped out into the cold night air. The silence broke all at once: crickets, distant traffic, wind moving through leaves, like the world hit unpause. Behind me, from the threshold, something let out a sound I will never forget. A wet, furious, gurgling hiss, like a drowning animal that had learned how to speak. I slammed the door and ran to my car. When I peeled out of the driveway, heart hammering against my ribs hard enough to bruise, the last thing I saw in my rearview mirror was a smear of dark red slowly sliding down the inside of my front door window. Something had gotten that close. Something that didn't want me leaving. Something that wasn't finished choosing its exit. I didn't stop driving until the highway signs turned unfamiliar, and the sky started to brighten with the earliest smear of dawn, that cold bluish light that makes empty roads feel like a different dimension. My phone sat on the passenger seat, vibrating every few minutes with alerts I refused to look at. I didn't want any more warnings, any more instructions written by people who clearly knew what was living under my house and still chose to let me live above it. When exhaustion finally hit me hard enough to turn my vision blurry, I pulled into a rest stop, a concrete rectangle in the middle of nowhere with flickering streetlights and vending machines humming like they were the only living things around. I parked beneath the brightest lamp I could find, locked the doors, and finally dared to check my phone. There were 4 messages from the same unnamed sender. No greetings, no explanations, just blunt, cold instructions. Message 1, do not return home. The structure is compromised. Message 2, the source has shifted surface level. Do not intercept. Message 3, your movement pattern indicates pursuit. Remain in high traffic areas. Message 4, it does not like open spaces. That last sentence stuck in my mind like a splinter. It does not like open spaces. Whatever had crawled or oozed its way out of my basement, it didn't follow me outside. Not immediately. Not last night, but sunrise was coming. And I didn't know if sunlight mattered to something that bled through doors and moved like a dying animal learning how to stand. I closed my eyes, only long enough to steady my breathing, but the moment my eyelids touched, I saw it again. The smear on the inside of the door, the wet drip on my boot, the sound it made, the weight of its presence behind me, like standing in front of a furnace that exhaled rot. I jolted fully awake and turned the radio on, anything to drown out the memory. The static hissed for a moment before resolving into the voice of an emergency broadcaster, monotone and calm in a way that made my stomach turn. Reports of structural anomalies in residential properties continue to rise across the county. Citizens experiencing unexplained moisture, biological discharge, or architectural vibration should remain above ground level and evacuate if safe to do so. Authorities advise. I shut the radio off. I couldn't listen anymore. This wasn't just me. It wasn't just my house. Something was spreading, something old and hungry. And for some reason my home had been the place where it chose to surface. A heavy thud struck the back of my car. Not a small sound, not like a branch falling or a rock dropping. Something heavy enough to make the frame shudder. My breath hitched. Every muscle in my body locked. I didn't turn around, not yet. I slowly slid my phone toward me with trembling fingers, watching the screen instead of the rear window. A new message appeared instantly, as though something or someone were watching me in real time. Do not exit vehicle. Do not look. Remain still. Something scraped along the trunk, slow, deliberate, wet, like claws or fingers or something boneless dragging itself upward inch by inch. My pulse throbbed so loudly I could barely hear anything else. Another message appeared. It is not fully surfaced. It is searching for familiar structures. You are no longer one of them. I didn't understand the wording, familiar structures. Was it looking for the door it bled through, the basement it crawled out of? My house wasn't just a place it hid in, maybe it was something it was connected to, something it grew inside, something it hatched from. The scraping reached the rear window. A soft sound followed, like breath fogging glass, except it wasn't normal breath. It bubbled like air forcing its way through thick liquid. My throat tightened. My hands shook violently, but I didn't turn. Couldn't. Another message. Hold still. It cannot see you if you do not acknowledge it. Behind me the bubbling breath grew louder, warmer, closer. Something pressed gently against the glass, an exploratory nudge. Then another, then harder. The car rocked slightly with each touch. Something big, something heavy. Something that moved like it wasn't used to having weight yet. The atmosphere inside the car thickened until every breath felt like inhaling steam. My vision blurred. I felt the pressure behind me, not physical touch but presence, awareness, like being in a room with someone staring at the back of your skull. The scraping stopped, the breathing stopped, the weight lifted, silence. For a full minute I didn't move a muscle, didn't breathe, didn't blink. When my phone buzzed again I nearly screamed. New message, it has left you. Do not drive yet. Wait exactly 6 minutes. I watched the clock on the dashboard. Each second crawled by like it was dragging chains. At minute 4, a new sound carried across the empty parking lot, faint, distant, but unmistakable. A wet slithering like something dragging its body across concrete, moving away, searching, choosing something else, someone else. At minute 6, I turned the key and drove, not fast, not slow, just steady. The sun was creeping over the horizon now, painting the world in gold and pink, the kind of colors that should make a person feel safe. They didn't. My basement door had bled in total darkness. But it wasn't darkness that created the thing underneath. It was age, pressure, time. Something had been growing under my house for years, maybe decades, waiting for a point of weakness. A place where the barrier between what's alive and what shouldn't be could tear open. And I had lived above that tier. I didn't know where I was driving. I didn't know how far I had to go. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever had woken up beneath my house wasn't finished. It had surfaced. It was moving. And now that it knew the shape of my home, my hallway, my basement, my door, it was going to find somewhere else to bleed through, somewhere else to hatch, somewhere else to exit. And this time it might not stop at a door. I didn't sleep for the next 36 hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that bubbling breath against the glass, felt the humid pressure of something that had no right to exist learning the shape of my car, learning me. I drove without direction, following highways at random until the sun dipped again and darkness reclaimed everything that wasn't asphalt or my headlights. I thought distance would help. I thought whatever was under my house couldn't follow across states, across county lines, across borders. I was wrong. At 9:14 p.m. the road ahead shimmered, not like heat, not like fog, but like rippling flesh, stretching across the pavement in a long, thin membrane barely visible until my headlights struck it. My whole body locked. I slammed the brakes. The car skidded, tires screeching, stopping inches from the pulsing film spread across the road like a skin someone had peeled off and laid flat. It wasn't blocking me. It was marking something, a boundary, a scent trail, a message. My phone vibrated violently. Message: do not cross biological spread. Turn around immediately. Spread. That wasn't liquid. That wasn't blood. That was part of it. A sensory extension. A searching limb meant to detect me if I passed over it. I threw the car into reverse, heart pounding, watching the membrane ripple as though something beneath it felt my engine, tasted my presence. When I was finally far enough away, I pulled onto a dirt turnout and killed the headlights. Total darkness swallowed me. The silence was unbearable. My breath sounded too loud. The tick of the cooling engine echoed like gunshots. I checked my phone again, hoping for more instructions, more answers, anything. But instead, a new message appeared: it is migrating. You cannot outrun a system designed to spread. My stomach twisted. Designed? Designed by who or what? I typed the first question that came to mind: what is it? The reply came instantly. Subsurface colony behavior, biological network, not individual, not singular. It wasn't one creature. It was a colony, a hive intelligence. And my basement had been one of the openings, one of the mouths. Another message arrived. You awoke a surface vector. It mirrors the structures IT first contacted. Structures like doors, hallways, lungs. My chest tightened. I remembered the wet breath on the glass, the bubbling sound, the heat. It wasn't breathing because it needed air. It was breathing because it was learning how. I felt something cold wash through me. I typed again: why me? Why my house? The reply came slower this time, like the sender was choosing their words carefully. Your property SAT directly above a pressure point. Shifting bedrock. We expected a discharge event eventually. Expected. They expected my basement to start bleeding. They expected something to crawl out into my home. Another message. You were not supposed to be inside the structure at the time of surface event. Risk assessment error. Risk assessment error. They were monitoring my house. They were monitoring me. My vision blurred with anger and fear so intense it felt electric. Another message appeared before I could type. We are providing new coordinates. GOTHERE now. Do not stop. Do not look for signs of spread. Do not follow any red FILMATION. Coordinates popped onto my phone. A location hundreds of miles away. A straight shot down a dead stretch of highway leading into thick woodland. A place I didn't recognize. A place nobody should recognize. I didn't want to go, but what choice did I have? They knew more than I did. They were watching whatever was hunting me. They might be able to help, or they might just want to contain me in a different way. But staying put guaranteed one thing: the colony would find me, because now I understood something horrifying. It wasn't tracking me by scent. It wasn't tracking me by sound. It was tracking me through memory. My house had imprinted on it, my doors, my floors, my shape, my breathing, my existence. Now it moved through the world wearing my architecture like a scent trail. It didn't follow its prey. It followed what its prey called home. So I drove. Hours passed. The forest closed in around me. The moon rose and fell behind clouds. I felt like I was driving into the stomach of something enormous. At 2:37 a.m. I reached the location. It wasn't a building. It wasn't a bunker. It wasn't anything man-made. It was a clearing in the woods, perfectly circular, unnaturally smooth, devoid of grass. In the center sat a single object, a steel hatch embedded into the soil, frost forming around its edges despite the warm night. My phone buzzed. Enter the structure. Follow the corridor. Do not touch the walls. Do not respond if you hear yourself. My mouth went dry. Hear myself. Before I could decide whether I was brave enough or stupid enough to open that hatch, the forest behind me shifted. Something moved between the trees. Not fast, not slow, just inevitable. Branches cracked, leaves trembled. A wet, familiar breath exhaled into the night air. Bubbling, heavy, hungry, it had followed. It had learned how to walk, and it was close. I sprinted to the hatch, grabbed the freezing metal wheel, and twisted. It groaned open with a hiss of cold air that felt older than the world. Inside, a staircase descended into red light. Thick, pulsing, alive. I looked behind me one last time. A silhouette stood between the trees. No shape, no face, just a mass of dripping darkness learning to hold itself upright. I climbed down. I pulled the hatch closed above me. And as the metal sealed shut, as the locking mechanism echoed through the buried corridor, a new message appeared on my phone. You are not safe down there, but you are safer than you were up here. And then one more. Move quickly. It knows this place. It has been here before. My blood turned to ice. Whatever this place was, whatever lived beneath it, whatever colony had awakened, this wasn't its first emergence into the world. It was its return, and I had just climbed into its old home. The staircase ended in a narrow corridor carved into the earth like something had chewed its way through stone rather than dug it. The red light wasn't coming from bulbs or emergency strips. It hummed from the walls themselves, a low biological glow pulsing in slow waves as though I were standing inside the throat of some enormous creature that was learning how to breathe. My footsteps echoed damply, swallowed instantly by the soft, wet throb of the corridor. I kept checking my phone even though my hands were shaking so violently the screen kept blurring. No new messages, no instructions, no warnings. Just the oppressive knowledge that whatever had crawled out of my basement was above ground now, pacing the forest in the dark, sniffing for familiar shapes in the world, searching for structures that tasted like home. I moved deeper. The corridor narrowed in places, widened in others, the floor slick with condensation that smelled faintly metallic. At one point I touched the wall without thinking and jerked back instantly. Its surface twitched, shivered, reacting as though surprised. I wiped my hand on my jeans and forced myself to keep going. A distant rumble vibrated through the walls, low and heavy, like a heartbeat magnified through a cave. The deeper I went, the more wrong everything felt. This place wasn't built. It was grown. The metal framing around the hatch above had been human, but everything beneath it belonged to something far older, something that had roots, something that spread, something that had been here long before houses existed, long before people existed. I reached a bend in the corridor and froze. Ahead of me, the floor dipped sharply downward into a large chamber bathed in deep crimson light. At the center of the room was a pit, a wide, circular maw filled with thick, slow-moving fluid the color of spoiled blood. The whole chamber smelled like a wound that would never heal. My phone buzzed. I nearly dropped it. New message: remain at the edge of the pit. Do not approach the opening. I glanced around, heart hammering. If I wasn't supposed to approach it, why had they sent me here? Another message arrived. It is tracking the structures you carried with you. Your floor, your door, your stairs. Your breathing, you must let them go. My breathing hitched. My basement door bleeding at 3 a.m. hadn't been a beginning, it had been an exchange. I hadn't escaped my house. I'd taken my house with me. A sound echoed from above, a deep, dragging, wet scrape, distant but growing closer. It was descending. It had found the hatch. My pulse spiked so fast I saw stars. New message: you must shed the architecture it uses to follow you. Place personal items into the pit. Allow the structure to accept them. I stared down at the slow-churning red liquid. It wasn't water, it wasn't blood. It was something digestive, something hungry, something that absorbed what whole things couldn't. My backpack felt suddenly heavy. My keys, my wallet, my phone. The dust from my basement floor still clinging to my boots. I didn't want to go closer, but footsteps, heavy, uneven, learning, echoed down the corridor behind me. It was close, too close. And if it reached me here in the place it had once lived, I knew it wouldn't just kill me. It would reclaim me. I stepped to the edge of the pit, holding my breath as the heat rising from it wrapped around my legs like steam from fresh blood. The movement inside thickened, turning slow circles like a creature stirring in its sleep. I threw in my backpack first. It sank almost instantly, dissolving before it even disappeared beneath the surface. I threw my phone next. It buzzed once, one final message flashing for a fraction of a second before it was swallowed. I couldn't read it in time. A shadow filled the corridor entrance, tall, sagging, dripping. It stood upright now, its limbs learning human shape but not quite managing symmetry, its head tilted as though sniffing. A wet choking sound bubbled from deep inside its chest as it took one slow step into the chamber. I kicked off my boots. They hit the pit with a hiss and melted like wax on a stove. A strange sensation washed over me, something being pulled out of me. Not physically, something else. Memories, shapes. The blueprint of my home slowly unraveling from my skin. The creature lurched closer. It moved faster now, shedding its earlier clumsiness, its new body stabilizing as it learned how weight distribution worked. 2 more steps and it would reach me. I tore off my jacket, my shirt, everything that still carried the scent of my house, and hurled them into the pit. The pit brightened, glowed, pulsed. The chambers around me vibrated with sudden pressure. The creature froze, its posture shifted, confused. Its wet breath stuttered. It no longer recognized me. The blueprint was gone. I stepped backward toward a narrow tunnel on the far side of the chamber I hadn't noticed before. The creature lurched toward the pit instead of me, drawn to the dissolving remains of the structure it once pursued. Its attention had shifted entirely. I didn't wait. I didn't breathe. I sprinted into the tunnel barefoot, feeling the cold stone bite into my feet. Behind me, the chamber roared, an organic, furious sound that echoed through every passageway. I didn't stop until the tunnel opened into a second hatch. This one rusted, ancient, half-buried. I shoved it open with both hands. It gave way with a shriek. And then I was outside, forest, night, fresh air, silence. I ran until my legs nearly buckled. When I finally collapsed in the dirt miles away, dawn was rising. The sky was pink again, soft, gentle, untouched. I lay there shaking, half-naked, barefoot, covered in dust and sweat and fear. And for the first time since 3:00 a.m. 2 nights ago, my phone wasn't buzzing. I didn't have a phone anymore. I didn't have a house anymore. I didn't have anything that connected me to it. 6 months have passed. I don't sleep much. I move constantly. Small towns, motels, shelters, nowhere with a basement, nowhere with doors that feel too old. But sometimes around 3 a.m. I hear it, not close, not hunting, just searching. The earth shifts, the pipes groan, the walls breathe. It's looking for a home it no longer remembers. And sometimes, God help me, I miss mine.